to wet out here. Hey, long time no talk. In this video, I just wanted to take some time to recap my first ever marathon that took place this last weekend. This was the CIM, the California International Marathon, and it happened on Sunday, December 8th. And I just want to talk about the experience because it was, I think, in a lot of folks' minds, could be seen as a failed marathon experience. And so I just want to start from the beginning and talk about the training, how it went, and the lessons learned from doing your first marathon. Because maybe you're somebody maybe you've done some marathons and you probably can relate to a lot of this, or maybe you're thinking about doing one in the future and you just want a kind of more of a raw perspective on what it looks like with the training and the actual race and the trials and tribulations that go through your mind throughout. So anyway, this marathon experience started shortly after finishing a half marathon earlier this year in 2024 in March. It was like a St. Patrick's themed half marathon that took place, and my girlfriend and we trained for that together. And when we trained for that race, basically I said, okay, I'm really into strength training and not running right now, but I will train with you at your goal pace and we'll do it together. And with that half marathon, we trained for like 3 months at the start of 2024, and we absolutely crushed and dominated the race goal, the plan that she wanted to, as far as the pacing goes and us doing it together. It was such a fun experience. And it made me feel really grateful to have a significant other who I could train with and we could go through this stuff together. And so after the kind of the high of the half marathon success, it was only like a week or two after where we were thinking like, should we step it up? Should we go for a full marathon? And this was something that neither of us have ever thought about doing before. We are both big people. Like, I'm 6'8" and my girlfriend is 6'2". Her name's Carissa, by the way. But we, as taller, bigger people, like, you don't really see super giant people like crushing it for crazy long distance endurance efforts. So, I mean, obviously there's people out there, but if you're a bigger person, in general, like, that long distance running isn't necessarily like our strong suit. But we were thinking, man, if we could do it for the half, we could do this for the full. So a couple weeks later, after that race back in March, in April, we signed up for the CIM race that was taking place in December. So we know we had a huge stretch of time before that. And so we knew that we wanted to follow a specific training plan for that too. And most training plans for marathons seem to take between like 16 and 20 weeks. And so we decided to kind of, casually run until like that 16-week mark, or maybe it was 18 weeks. I think it was 18 weeks actually. What we ended up following was the Hal Higdon Novice 1 plan. I'll throw that plan up here on the screen somewhere so you can take a look at it. But essentially it just involves 4 runs per week that build you up over the course of many weeks, many months, and then taper you down towards the very end. I literally, off the top of my head, can't remember if it's 16 or 18 weeks, but however, whether it was 16 or 18, we basically took the marathon start date and backed up that many weeks, and we said we were going to start the official training then. And until that point, we were just kind of keeping up with our fitness. And then, so when we started the training plan, I was super hyped to document everything. I started like a separate YouTube and Instagram thing for just vlogging and documenting things. But anyone who's a content creator, you know that the content creation wheel never stops churning. And so trying to keep up with my regular training tall stuff, filming my workouts from my rowing app, and coaching in person still, it was just another thing to try to make videos for. And video creation just takes a long time. It's just, there's a lot going on all the time with making and editing videos, and especially with an experience like this too, where it was like an intimate training experience as far as, you're with your partner and doing it together. And I didn't want to always just have my camera out like, hey, yeah, like, woohoo. So I filmed the first couple weeks of training, but then kind of stopped from there so we could really dial in when it started to get into the long miles. And so the training plan started off great. Like it was, and the whole time it was totally fine. You know, the midweek runs, it basically had 3 kind of back-to-back midweek runs. We planned for a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for the midweek runs, and then our long run usually took place on a Saturday morning. And so the idea there is just to get your body used to the high mileage and all that time on your feet. And so we were crushing it with the training plan. Like the philosophy with the runs, and this is also what the training plan instructed to do too, was to not do all your runs like at your race pace, but to train 30 to 90 seconds slower than that to help you build up your aerobic base, which in the exercise science world makes total sense. You know, you've heard of it, zone 2 training, you know, kind of floating your heart rate around that zone 2, zone 3 to build up your aerobic base. And that way you're not like maxing yourself out every single run, which is something that a lot of people, the kind of trap that people fall into when they first start running, is thinking that they need to make every run as hard as possible. But it turns out that our cardiovascular system, our aerobic system, adapts a lot faster than our joints, our muscles, our tendons, etc. And so that's why a lot of people tend to get like, you know, knee pain or hip pain or calf pain when they first start running, especially those like first couple months, just because your muscles can't catch up to how fast your cardio improves. So it's really important that you like slow down, you keep your heart rates fairly low as you build up your mileage and time on your feet so your muscles can adapt to that. And throughout the training plan, like we were on it all the way through. I think we missed maybe 1 or 2 runs. Sorry, there's a plane overhead. I'm gonna wait a second. Okay, plane's gone. So about halfway through the marathon training plan, it wants you to do a half marathon. And so we ended up doing a trail half marathon. It was the only one that was happening during the weekend where the plan said to do it. And so we did a trail half marathon that was up kind of in the more mountainous area here in California. Holy crap, that was hard. It had over like 3,500 feet of elevation change. Like it was a crazy hard half marathon, not necessarily the kind of half marathon I think that the plan wanted us to have, but we still did it and it was still a fun experience. I'll throw up some photos here if they haven't popped up already from that run. It was a good time, but it made us think like, trail running is pretty fun. And I don't know if you've seen trail runners before, but they have like the sticks to help like get up the really steep hills. I mean, some of those hills were crazy steep, like to the point where like you had to walk with your hands on your thighs. We had no idea what we signed up for when we did that, but we got that done. And even though that was really hard, about halfway through the training, that was just one of those moments again of like, we're doing this thing. Like there's no reason why we can't keep this up and keep going, keep pushing, etc. So training plan continues. The mileage starts to build up. We start hitting things like, 12-mile or 14-mile runs on the weekend, 16, 18, building all the way up to 20 miles on the weekend. Fun fact, with the training plan, the way things lined up was once we had set the training plan, my high school friends wanted to make our annual boys trip, and we decided to go to Japan this year. And so finding the right date to go to Japan to make it work with the plan is essentially our peak week of training, which involved a 5-mile run on Tuesday, 10 miles on Wednesday, 5 on Thursday, and then 20 on Saturday. The next next morning, I was on a plane to go to Japan for 9 days, which was, when I first saw that was gonna happen months before, I was like, that's gonna be a crazy week, but the work got done. Like we literally did every single one of our runs, got on the plane, went to Japan. It was a fun time. I didn't make a video about it because I don't know if that really is here in the training tall sphere, but great time there, and even stayed on top of the runs there. Now my runs weren't perfect while I was out there, but they still got done. And I think I totally forgot to mention that this whole time with the training together, we were running again at Carissa's goal pace that she wanted to. She and I have different fitness levels, but it was again such a intimate experience training for the half marathon together. I knew that for this marathon, I was like, I'm not gonna train just for myself to do this. Like I wanna be there with you to get you to your goal and we can finish through the line together. So anyway, in Japan, I was a little more lackadaisical with my runs because I knew that my fitness was still gonna be there. But I still got some runs done. And it was totally cool to run in another country. It was, super fun. When I got back from Japan, we had officially entered into the taper phasing of the marathon training plan, which was about 3 weeks of basically taking the mileage and making it smaller and smaller and smaller. That way your body can get more recovery time. So by the time the marathon comes, you're like fully recovered and ready to bring it. And so as the tapering weeks went on and our body started to feel fully recovered and you kind of get that antsy feeling of the race coming up, the nerves really started to pour in, especially for Carissa, because, you know, again, we had a goal of a sub 5 hours. That was the plan for the marathon, was to go sub 5 hours. So most of our training, again, had involved going about 30 to 90 seconds slower than that per mile to build up the aerobic base. And we were trusting that that was going to carry us through for when race day came. We were fully recovered. We didn't have midweek miles stacked up. Like if we had done 40 miles at about 45 seconds slower than our race pace that week before, like at that peak week, we knew we could do that for the race day. So race day comes around, or race week comes around, and we learned that you can't get dropped off at the race from like a friend or an Uber or anything. You actually have to take an official race shuttle to get to the starting course. And the bus that would shuttle us over left at 4:30 a.m. on the dot. So that's a really early start to the day for having to get to a shuttle and then be shuttled at 4:30 in the morning. And so that week before the marathon, the very last week of tapering and right before the race, we actually made an effort to try to get up extra early every day. So we started with a 5 a.m. alarm on Monday, and then a 4:45 alarm on Tuesday, 4:40 on Wednesday, 4:30 on Thursday. Like we were just trying to get used to being up, so that way this wouldn't come as a big shock to us when we had to get up and be up early, be at the shuttle on time. We wanted to just make sure everything was set up as perfectly as possible for our success, because we had gotten our runs done. We did everything as right as we thought we should have. So race day comes, we make our oatmeal in the morning, put it in some disposable containers so we can take with us onto the bus. And you can see the photo here, just like feeling super stoked that everything had like come out according to plan. We hit the race plan, we tapered correctly, we were getting up early. The weather was absolutely perfect for the race day. There was going to be no rain, which here in Northern California in December, it's usually 50-50. It's either going to be raining or it's not. And it just so happened to just be a beautiful day planned for race day. So we get to the shuttle area and there are thousands of people waiting to get on these shuttles. It was crazy. By the time we made it to the race course and we're listening to the announcers kind of hype up the morning, we learned that there were over 9,000 people doing this race. Like, I've never seen that many people doing a race ever. But I come from a rowing background, as a lot of you know, and at rowing races, let's just say there's not 9,000 rowing competitors ever at any of these regattas. And I gotta say, the line of porta potties was a sight to behold. Literally hundreds of porta potties just like lined up, ready to be used. And we got to the race course pretty early and we actually got to use them. Like, I was like the first one in my porta potty. We went all the way down to the end, but we got that nice, fresh, unused stalls, and that was great. And then we ate our oatmeal, we kind of hung out on the bus, and then when it was race time at 7 a.m., we got out like 40 minutes beforehand just to warm up and go to the bathroom one more time. The lines were insane. Even though there were hundreds and hundreds of porta potties, each one of them had a line of like 15 plus people in it, all the way down. So it actually came to like pretty close call to use the bathroom one more time before the race. We ended up getting to the front of the line of the porta potties we chose with like 4 minutes until race start time. But we got it done. We brisk walked our way to the start line, and it actually ended up being perfect timing. Again, we had completely set ourselves up for full success. Like, everything had gone according to plan and we were ready to race. So race starts and we get right to our pace, and just a little bit faster than the overall race goal, because again, for a 5-hour marathon, you need an 11:27 per mile. So pacing us, I was thinking, okay, we're gonna start around like an 11:20, maybe 11:15. That way we can eat up a little bit of, we can get some extra time spaced for bathroom breaks, because it's a 5-hour race. Like, you're gonna use the bathroom at least once. So we kicked it off and it was great. first half, like we were cruising. We were right on pace. It was a series of rolling hills in the first half of the race, and some of those hills were a little tougher than others, but anytime it went up, it went back down as well. Granted, we hadn't done as much hill training, especially downhill running, that was on the race course, but still, as we got to mile 6, mile 8, mile 10, checking the watch, we were on pace, on track. And then I think we took our first bathroom break around like mile 10. We stopped and just quick pee. And as we stopped for a second, you're like, oh, kind of feel those legs working now. But we came out from that, got right back to pace. And as we were coming to the halfway mark, there's these big banners showing like this halfway point through, 13.1 miles in. It's also a race that can be done as a relay. So that was like a relay exchange point as well. But as we saw those banners in the distance, so we were just shy of the 13-mile mark, we started to run into some tummy problems, some tummy troubles. And this is something that we weren't really used to experiencing even on our long runs while we were training for this. So we had to make a big detour to find a bathroom that was open because there wasn't any around. And let's just say the bathroom had to be used. But we took care of that, and actually it took a big chunk of time off of out of like the current pacing. Like when we passed the halfway mark, like we were pretty much right on the dot for the 5-hour mark, which wasn't the best place to be in just because I wanted to have a little bit more of that gap, that buffer if needing to use the bathroom again. But got back to pace and suddenly started to feel that pace was going to be unsustainable. This is where the cardio wasn't becoming the problem. The leg fatigue was really setting in. And all of a sudden, our 11:20 per mile started to dwindle to more like 12 minutes per mile. And then we crossed like mile 14, mile 15, it gets down to like 12 and a half minutes per mile. And as we get to mile 16, we start needing to have these walking breaks, unable to sustain the pace. And once I heard that we needed to take some walk breaks, that was when it was like, uh-oh. Like we are right now kind of in the middle of no man's land as far as a race is concerned. It's that third quarter from like miles 17 to like 20, 21, where the end is nowhere even close in sight, but so much has been done already and you're effing tired. And so that was when started getting in our heads about the goal not being achieved. But you have to keep going. Like we knew for a fact that we were going to finish this race. Like that was without question. But the main objective was to hit the goal time. And as we had to start taking these bouts of walking and running, and as we were doing the running after the walking, again, 12, 30, 13-minute mile paces, this is when I started to get thinking about the training plan. And I started to like kick myself a little bit, thinking like, damn, we did not do enough training at race pace or above race pace because our legs are getting tired, but our cardio is fine. And so as we keep going, mile 17, 18, 19, the pacing is just getting slower and we need more and more walk breaks. And just the ability to move the legs when we crossed the 20-mile mark was just getting unbearable, even for me. Now, going into this marathon, I knew that I was going to be tired after, but we had been training around Carissa's paces, and I was able to manage her paces, usually 20 to 30 beats per minute, heart rate-wise, slower than hers for like all of our training. And so I knew that it's still going to be tired. I mean, it's 26 miles. Like, you're going to be tired no matter what. But it was around the 20-mile mark where I was like, oh my. Like, I'm having trouble moving my legs now. And thinking of the pain that I was starting to really feel in the legs at that point, that's when I knew like she was really, really hurting. And that was crushing me on the inside because I was feeling really bad because I feel like all of a sudden this was all my fault. Like I was in charge of the training plan and I was the one trying to keep us sub race pace for all those runs just to build up the cardio fitness. And here we were at like mile 22 with like heart rates. My heart rate was in like the 120s. Carissa's was in like the 140s. Very sustainable heart rates. And we are just barely able to pick up our legs, like just absolute lead heavy legs. And it was so frustrating because you're like, I want to move, I want to keep going. You can talk and have a conversation, but it's like the legs just wouldn't go. And so those last like 4 miles, from mile 22 to 26, it was bittersweet with those miles because you start to enter into downtown Sacramento where the race ends. You start on the outskirts of this place called Folsom, way outside of the town, and you end in downtown for those last few miles, but that's where all the crowds are. You know, this is a big event for Sacramento and for California in general. People travel all over for this race. And so you start to enter into the cities where, you know, you got all the businesses cheering and all the families outside and everyone's, you know, big music and everything. And here we are just like barely able to pick up our feet in these bouts of like walking and running where our runs were now at like 14 and a half minutes per mile. Like that was as fast as we could run when we weren't walking. And you know, this is where we start to see like our friends and our family pop up on the sides cheering us on, taking photos, taking videos. And we are just having a miserable time, not only because we can't keep a consistent running pace, but you know, the 5 hour mark passed and we still had like 2.5 miles left to go. And we both knew that the 5 hour mark had passed. We knew that the goal was just absolutely toast. And so at that point, it had just been about finishing. And it was just the longest last 3 miles of our lives. And you can see here with the race photos here at the finish, as we neared the finish line, the misery on our faces. And obviously the marathon is painful for everybody. But this just came as a total shock, honestly, as far as how much slower we ended up being compared to our goal pace time. The fact that we finished at 5 hours and 38 minutes, I think clocked us in at, that clocks like a 12:40 something per mile, which is slower than like what we were training at even. You know, it was like we had done 20 miles in a week where in total we did 40 miles. We finished those 20 miles at like a 12:20 pace, and we could have kept going if we had to. But we had this scenario where we had done this first half harder than we had trained at, but it was race pace. It was supposed to be hard, but it just tanked us for that second half. And so we had to go through the demoralizing process of just getting through those miles and crawling through the finish line pretty much with our goal completely out of sight. So very bittersweet finish. You know, we had done it. Like we did a marathon. We were probably I think we were the tallest couple there that did the marathon together for sure. But we were so far off of our goal time. And this is it really got to Carissa, especially. You know, she expressed these feelings of like feeling like she was letting me down. Because, you know, like, again, we trained for this together. The whole goal was for me to run with her, to pace her. And when she said that, it broke me on the inside. It was really hard to hear because I know like she was trying so hard the whole time, you know, and I know how like uncomfortable I was feeling. And I know that like those last few miles, like I know she was just in so much pain. And it was upsetting because again, I really feel like it was my fault. I really do. I feel like I undertrained us for this endeavor. And it was very emotional. Like as we crossed through the line, like I started to feel like that, you know, when you're about to cry, you get like that deep breath and like, and I didn't actually cry, but like I had that like sensation. Sometimes like when you hear like a really like good song, a really good emotional song, or, you know, whatever. But I felt like I let us down. And I think objectively, like it looked like a failure from our parts. And I'm not gonna say that it wasn't. Like, yeah, sure, we did it. Cool, we did the race. And that's what everyone was saying. When we were telling our friends, family, like, we didn't hit our goal, but, you know, and they're like, well, at least you finished. And that is a big accomplishment. Like, I'm not gonna say that's not an accomplishment, it is. But as a trainer and someone who coaches people, you know, to hitting goals, whatever they might be, I always try to instill this sense of accountability of like, yeah, but if we didn't hit the goal, it's our fault. And it is our fault. And so essentially we're left with this crossroads, because before we started the race, we told ourselves if we finish under this goal pace, we're probably never going to do a long distance race again. But here we were, 40 minutes slower than our goal pace. And we came to this crossroads of, are we going to try this again next year? Or are we going to just give up and do something different? And this whole idea of this fork in the road of basically keep going or give up, this is the fork in the road that we all face, not just in fitness, but in so many other aspects of our lives. When I coach individuals who, let's say we're in a group program and people, they're not losing weight, or they feel like they're not seeing results from workouts. Okay, you're at the fork in the road then. What's the answer going to be? Are you just going to give up then? Or are you going to keep trying? We're all constantly at that fork in the road. It's almost like a cruel trick. Like you take a path, but a few steps later, you're back at another fork with the same signs once again. And so I think this experience is just a good lesson in learning and understanding that when your goals aren't met or something didn't work out your way, there are only two options. You give up and you stop trying, or you figure it out. And you have to figure it out. There is an answer out there. There's tall people that run plenty fast. There's people in your scenario who have lost the weight, who have come from your kind of background, who have had similar experiences to you, that have persevered through whatever it is. Again, fitness, work, home life, just personal growth, development, whatever it might be. The answers are there. The solution is there. And so this whole story was just to maybe help you come away with the lesson of remembering that those are your two choices. Wherever you are, whatever you want your life to look like, fitness or otherwise, you're constantly at this crossroads where you either figure it out and keep going, or you just give up. And are you somebody who is just going to give up? I know you're not that person, and Carissa and I, we're not those people either. So we've already started to kind of game plan what the next steps are going to be for tackling this marathon with a little bit more precision next time, a little more training at race pace and above race pace. And just taking full accountability that, damn, we didn't hit our goal. Damn. But we're going to figure this out and make it happen. And in this case, like, giving up wouldn't be the end of the world. Like, there's lots of other fitness endeavors we could go through, but I think when you decide what's important to you, especially when it comes to your health, your weight, how you feel, exercising for your longevity, like, that's a big decision and one you don't want to give up on. So when you're at that fork in the road, remember that it is black and white. Even though the world is gray in so many ways, it's black and white. You either give up or you keep going. So that was my marathon experience, our marathon experience together. Very humbling and very motivating to remember that the answers are out there. The work just has to go in. You just got to be a little smarter. You got to course correct, just like with every obstacle we have in our lives. So I know this was a super long-winded video, but if you made it to the end, I would love for you to share an experience of a big hurdle that you faced, something that might have been seen as a failure, but something that you ended up persevering through, course correcting, and taking that fork in the road towards figuring it out and to keep going. I would love to hear your stories down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope there's some lessons that maybe you could take away from this. And I hope when you come to the fork in the road, you always choose the path that's right for you, that's honest for you, and that you keep going. Thanks for watching. Cheers to hard work. Cheers to a great 2025, which is now right around the corner, depending on when you're watching this or not. But thanks again for watching and listening to my story, and I'll see you in the next video.